Hi friends, hope you are doing well. I'm Dr. Ganguly. Welcome to my channel. So today I will be discussing about 5 secrets to mitigate plagiarism. And as many of you may know, plagiarism happens when you essentially try to pass off some writing or piece of writing as your own when it's actually done by somebody else. And also when you use content from people without essentially citing the actual source. So essentially, plagiarism is considered a serious academic crime, and there can be punishment given out for plagiarism. So essentially, people may retract your paper, there may be negative consequences for your thesis if content is plagiarized, and so on. So it's very important to avoid plagiarism, and I will tell you 5 ways to do that. So the number one thing is that you should cite the source paper. And I will tell you that in many cases, just this act of citation can save you from very severe trouble. So even in some case where you have taken some content, you have rewritten it slightly, and you have got this new paragraph in your paper or thesis, if you have just taken the time to mention that this content is taken from a paper, or just at the end of the first sentence or the last sentence in brackets you have put the reference number, it's going to save you a lot of problem, because at least you have done the task of citing the work. Now this will certainly greatly mitigate the problem which happens if people say, okay, this paragraph is very similar to that by the actual person, because what you have done is you have cited the work and your paraphrasing may not be up to the mark, but it is not really an attempt to pass off this work as your own. So that part of the problem has been resolved to a lot of degree. So in any case, I always encourage people who write papers and especially thesis is that do not be stingy about citation. Cite all the papers you can think of or from wherever you have taken anything, and mention the names of people so that essentially any accusation of plagiarism is reduced dramatically. So when people see that a piece of work is similar to theirs, but it has been acknowledged that they have essentially done this before by the citation, they are much less likely to file a case against you or to report this issue to the journal. So keep that in mind. Always cite the source paper. Now the second thing is use quotation marks. And sometime you may come across an optimally framed sentence or paragraph, and you may feel that this sentence has been written in such a nice manner that it's not possible to actually rewrite or paraphrase it. Especially if you are a foreign speaker of the English language, you can come across many such sentences. So one of the solutions to this problem is to use that sentence but put it in quotation marks, and also cite the reference for this particular phrase or sentence which you are using. So by putting quotation marks, you make sure that you are referring to the actual paper. You have made it a point that you have essentially quoted this verbatim from that source, and therefore you are not essentially plagiarizing this content. So I know of cases where people who were not so good in the English language, what they did is they used to take a large number of sentences written by different people and integrate it into their thesis and manuscript, and they would always put this in quotation mark and cite the reference. So there is no way then people can accuse them of plagiarism, though it may be that maybe up to 1/3 or a quarter of their paper is just in terms of quotation, but they have done nothing wrong. They have simply used the previously written optimal sentences and they have put these in quotation. So again, always try to do that. Use quotes wherever you take content from people, and never try to pass off this as your own work without using quotation marks and so on, because the worst form of plagiarism happens when somebody detects that a paragraph is taken from somewhere else, and not only you have not put quotation marks, you have not even cited that paper. So in that case, this is 100% case of plagiarism, because you are essentially trying to pass off this work of somebody else as your own work, and then the repercussions can be quite negative. Now the number 3 point is paraphrase whenever you can. So essentially, of course, you cannot take all the paragraphs from a paper and just include it in your paper. That would not be a nice thing to do. So what most people encourage you to do is to paraphrase a lot of the content. And paraphrasing means that you essentially write this in your own words, and I have made a video on this. I will give a link to this at the end of this video. And essentially what you do is you try to rewrite the sentences, you try to change the order of the sentences in the paragraph, and you can even use vocabulary to change the sentences. So essentially you can find synonyms of a large number of words, and you can replace the words used in those sentences by the words you come up with. So that is a good way to get rid of the plagiarism accusation which can come on you if you do not paraphrase sentences. Finally, the fourth point is that come up with your own concepts. So whenever you are following too many people, there is a tendency to copy and paste stuff from them. Now whenever you are entering a relatively newer field, you will find that you will be creating most of the content, you will be writing most of the content, and so the desire to plagiarize or the desire to copy and paste is going to be much less if there is not a huge amount of precursor material out there from which you can plagiarize from. So that's one more idea, is that create your own content. Finally, use software, and there are various software such as Grammarly, Turnitin, which can help to detect if you have plagiarized content, and Grammarly can actually help you to improve your content and change the wordings in many cases. Now also ChatGPT can help you do this. So I know of people who essentially write a rough piece of work in a paragraph on their own and then ask ChatGPT to essentially rephrase this content in a different manner, in a clearer manner, and so on, or in a formal manner. So ChatGPT will do this for you, and then you can use that particular paragraph. Do check, however, that this paragraph is something which passes the tests for plagiarism, so you can turn to software such as Turnitin for that. And if you don't have Turnitin, you can simply copy and paste this entire paragraph in Google and search it, and if there is a verbatim match, Google is going to immediately throw that particular match as the first hit which it gets in the search. So that will also help you figure out if something is plagiarized or not. So I have done this in cases where I saw very flowery language suddenly being used in some papers, and then I just copied that and pasted that in Google, and it led me to a different reference from where this has been exactly copied. So many people can figure out very easily if content is plagiarized, because what will happen is that there is a certain level of language being used throughout the paper, and then suddenly there is a very well written or flowery paragraph, and this points to the fact that this is coming from somebody else. So most people who are regular readers of papers and manuscripts can figure out if content is plagiarized, and they can do it even without the help of any software such as Turnitin. But of course, if you are submitting any kind of thesis or essay or manuscript to a library, be sure that they are going to put Turnitin on it, and they are going to use various software. So don't take the risk, use the different strategies which I mentioned today, and make sure that you do not plagiarize. That will certainly save you from a lot of grief which can befall you if you are guilty of plagiarism sometime later. So I'll end this video now, and I will see you in a video sometime soon. See you then.